The armored clashes of World War II are often remembered for the heavyweights of the battlefield, Tigers and Panthers dueling with Soviet giants like the T-34 and IS-2. Those late-war showdowns tend to dominate the history books. But before those steel behemoths even existed, German forces had already transformed the very nature of modern warfare with a revolutionary concept, the Blitzkrieg or lightning war. In the first 2.5 years of the conflict, German armored divisions swept across Europe with unprecedented speed and coordination, conquering Poland, shattering French defenses, overrunning the Balkans, and driving deep into Soviet territory. At the heart of these rapid victories was not a massive breakthrough tank, but a modest and unassuming vehicle, the Panzer III medium tank. At first glance, it hardly looked like a battle winner. Lightly armed, moderately armored, and far from intimidating compared to later designs. But in reality, the Panzer III was the perfect Blitzkrieg tank, a machine built not for raw strength, but for speed, coordination, and rapid victory. This is the story of how a seemingly ordinary medium tank became the backbone of Germany's lightning war, driving its earliest and most decisive victories. The Panzer III was conceived in the mid-1930s as Germany's first true medium tank. Earlier designs like the Panzer I and II were little more than stopgaps, training vehicles, and light scouts, but the Panzer III was different. It was designed from the start for real armored combat, forming the backbone of the swift, coordinated offensives that came to define Blitzkrieg. The Panzer III was developed according to specifications laid out by Heinz Guderian. Based on his vision for a true medium tank designed for armored warfare, the Army Weapons Department prepared detailed plans, and several major firms, including Daimler-Benz, MAN, Krupp, and Rheinmetall, were tasked with building prototypes to meet these requirements. Testing of these took place in 1936 and 1937, leading to the Daimler-Benz design being chosen for production. It was intended as the main battle tank of the German panzer divisions, capable of engaging and destroying opposing tank forces, and was to be paired with the Panzer IV, which was to fulfill the second use, dealing with anti-tank guns and infantry strongpoints. The first prototype of the Panzer III, designated Model A, was unveiled in May 1937, and 2 years later, mass production began. Its 37mm gun was intended specifically for fighting enemy armor. When it entered service, the Panzer III was widely regarded as one of the most advanced and capable tanks of its time. It was among the first tanks to feature a torsion bar suspension system. The Panzer III had a 3-man turret and a 5-man crew in total: commander, gunner, loader, driver, and radio operator. This design gave the commander the freedom to focus entirely on battlefield tactics, rather than operating the gun, giving the Panzer III a distinct edge over most contemporary tanks that lacked this level of crew specialization. Equally important was the inclusion of radios. Every Panzer III carried one, thanks in large part to the influence of Heinz Guderian, who came from the Signal Corps and understood the importance of communication. Allied tanks often lacked radios, forcing units to rely on hand signals or flagmen. German panzer units, by contrast, could coordinate in real time, a decisive advantage in mobile warfare. While French or Soviet tanks often fought in isolation, Panzer III crews could communicate and maneuver as a team across entire divisions. The design also emphasized crew ergonomics. A 3-man turret, large for the time, allowed efficient teamwork. The commander's cupola gave a 360-degree view, providing far better battlefield awareness than Allied counterparts. Inside, the intercom system ensured every crew member could communicate clearly. Suspension was another strength. Early versions experimented with leaf springs, but from the Model E onwards, torsion bar suspension gave the tank better mobility across rough ground. With a top speed of around 40 km/h, the Panzer III could keep pace with infantry and motorized units, vital for fast-moving Blitzkrieg operations. Initially, the Panzer III mounted a 37mm gun, matching German anti-tank guns of the time. The logic was logistical standardization, but tank crews quickly realized it wasn't enough. Fortunately, engineers had designed the turret ring large enough to accept upgrades, allowing the Panzer III to later mount the 50mm L-42 and eventually the long-barreled 50mm L-60 gun, which gave it respectable penetration against early war Soviet armor. When Germany invaded Poland in 1939, only a small number of Panzer IIIs were available. Still, they proved the concept of a dedicated medium tank. Combined with air support, artillery, and mechanized infantry, they demonstrated how Blitzkrieg worked in practice. By May 1940, in the invasion of France, the Panzer III had become the core of Germany's armored divisions. Still, it faced tanks that were, on paper, much superior: the French Char B1 and Somme S-35, or the British Matilda II. These Allied tanks had thicker armor and heavier guns. But they were slow, poorly coordinated, and often fought without radios. The Panzer III, with its speed, radios, and experienced crews, could outmaneuver and outcoordinate them. German tank units didn't need to destroy every enemy tank head-on. They isolated and bypassed them, striking deep into rear areas, encircling whole armies. The tank's strength wasn't raw firepower, it was being part of a coordinated, fast-moving system of war. The invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941 brought new challenges. The appearance of the T-34 and KV-1, with sloped armor and powerful guns, quickly revealed the Panzer III's limits. Upgunned versions with long 50mm cannons extended its usefulness, but by 1942, it was clear the Panzer III could no longer serve as the Wehrmacht's main battle tank. More than enemy tanks, German commanders feared Soviet field guns like the F-22 and later IS-3. Cheap, effective, and mass-produced, these weapons knocked out panzers in staggering numbers and highlighted the need for heavier German armor. The introduction of the 75mm Pak-40 anti-tank gun in 1942 marked a major leap in Germany's anti-tank capabilities. With its superior penetration and overall performance compared to the Soviet 76mm gun, the Pak-40 gave German forces a critical edge against increasingly well-armored enemy tanks. The weapon's effectiveness led to its widespread adaptation. The Germans mounted it on virtually every platform capable of carrying it. However, the Panzer III's chassis and turret ring could not accommodate the larger gun. In contrast, the Panzer IV and Stug III were both suitable for upgunning, and soon received the long-barreled 75mm armament. From that point onward, the roles within the German armored forces began to shift. The Panzer IV, now equipped with the powerful long 75mm gun, took over as the primary battle tank and spearheaded attacks, while the Panzer III transitioned into a supporting role on the battlefield. By this time, the new Panther tank was entering production, essentially taking over the same battlefield role as the Panzer III, but doing so far more effectively, at least on paper. It featured thicker armor, a more powerful gun, and superior mobility, all for only a slightly higher production cost, though comparing costs in the chaotic economic conditions of the late Reich is far from straightforward. When it worked as intended, the Panther offered everything the Panzer III had once promised, only faster, deadlier, and far more advanced, though its early models were infamous for mechanical breakdowns and even engine fires. From its early Model A through the late war Model N, the Panzer III grew significantly, nearly 50% heavier than its first versions, yet still mobile. This was possible due to the torsion bar suspension introduced from Model E. Armor protection was steadily improved, reaching up to 50mm with additional spaced armor. Despite these improvements, The Panzer III was never intended to be Germany's heavy hitter. German doctrine emphasized tanks as part of combined arms formations, not primarily as tank killers. Dedicated anti-tank guns, assault guns, and eventually heavier tanks would shoulder that role. Still, the Panzer III remained adaptable, its chassis reliable, easy to repair, and well-suited to modifications. One of the Panzer III's great strengths was reliability. In campaigns where mechanical failures often destroyed more tanks than enemy fire, the Panzer III held up well. Its engine and transmission were not overstrained by excessive weight, unlike later designs such as the Panther, which suffered serious reliability issues at Kursk. Equally important was repairability. German recovery units claimed to repair up to 75% of damaged tanks, and the Panzer III's straightforward design made it one of the easiest to put back into service. A functional Panzer III at the right place and time was worth more than a heavier but broken-down vehicle. The Panzer III, along with the Stug III, was among the easiest to repair. In a war where availability mattered more than specifications, this kept German armored forces operational. The Battle of Kursk in 1943 marked the turning point. While Panzer IIIs still fought effectively in supporting roles, they were increasingly outmatched. From then on, most were relegated to secondary theaters, training, or anti-partisan duties. From the beginning of mass production in 1939 until its final run in 1943, approximately 5,775 Panzer IIIs were built across 14 different variants. The final version, the Model N, was adapted for anti-infantry and backup roles rather than tank versus tank combat. It was equipped with the short-barreled 75mm L-24 gun, the same weapon that had served as the main armament on the early Panzer IVs. But the chassis lived on in perhaps its most famous form, the Stug III assault gun. Without a turret and with heavier armor and the deadly 75mm L-48 gun, it became Germany's most produced armored fighting vehicle and the most successful tank destroyer of the war, credited with over 30,000 kills. The Panzer III, therefore, left a legacy far beyond its years as a frontline tank. It was the tank that enabled the early Blitzkrieg campaigns, set the standard for crew ergonomics and coordination, and served as the foundation for one of Germany's most successful armored platforms. The Panzer III may not have had the raw firepower or armor of later tanks like the Tiger or Panther, but in its time, it was exactly what Germany needed. Fast, reliable, and above all, designed for teamwork and coordination, it was the perfect Blitzkrieg tank. Its success lay not in overwhelming strength, but in enabling the kind of mechanized warfare that redefined modern combat.